everyone, to another exciting episode of the Team Lead Talks podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Becker from Alexandria, Virginia. On this episode, we have a very special guest, Aeron Alberti from Havre de Grace, Maryland. He is a flipper contractor, investor extraordinaire with hundreds of doors in his portfolio, hundreds of flips every single year. Welcome, Aeron. Glad to have you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Aeron, so let's jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about your business model and where your experience came from in real estate. I know you've been in it for about 20 plus years now.
Yeah, well, the experience just came from falling into it. Nobody would hire me, basically, 20 years ago. And so I picked up a paintbrush and pretty much a paintbrush and started charging maybe $100 a day to go out and paint. Next thing you know, I didn't like that very much, so I'd hire people to do it for me. And right now I'm sitting at about, over 200 or so full-time labor employees and for my contracting company. I kind of would buy houses as I was renovating them for my customers and kind of built both of those businesses up simultaneously over the last 20 years.
Very cool. I know we were talking in the pre-conversation before the episode, but so you have a contracting company that you flip. Let's talk about that. I know you do your own flips and you have your own doors, but you also do that for other investor wholesalers on the eastern, mid-Atlantic, correct?
Exactly. So right around mostly all Maryland, the 695 corridor, we'll call it. We do go down to PG County and so a little bit on the Eastern Shore, but for the most part, like Baltimore is kind of the hub of all that. And we do 400 renovations a year with my team, and about 100 of those are for myself. 100 of them are one other client, Brent Hess. I like dropping his name. He drops mine, so there you go, Brent. We do another 200 spread out over other investors, most of which have experience. We don't do a ton of one and done guys. Most of the people that I renovate for, this is what they do for a living.
Gotcha. Okay. That's quite the volume. So how are you, managing all those properties at once to get to 400 total? And what's your kind of model? Do you have like a, pick option at one or two and you kind of go in and do, a template kind of flip here?
Well, I mean, I think what separates us from what I've seen competition wise, as far as the volume and the speed, we basically put a crew of guys on a job and we don't leave until they're done. I mean, one of the complaints I got early on from investors and just networking was that, the investors would go buy the jobs and nobody was working. And it takes about 5 or 6 guys. It takes about 3 weeks to renovate cosmetically one of these houses. I mean, we're not putting additions on or second stories. We're taking an existing house with the existing framework and we're basically putting it back together. Most of what we do is, we get to these houses are full of trash. The walls are terrible. The kitchens need to be replaced. The bathroom needs to be replaced. We need new flooring, maybe a roof, maybe new windows, maybe swap out the HVAC. All of that stuff is kind of heavy cosmetic and you just kind of have to do it. And, I think there's a lot of my competition maybe will take on 5 jobs at a time, 10 jobs at a time with their crew and then kind of bounce them all around and eventually it gets done, but maybe it's months later and they're collecting deposits and then they're kind of money managing. And we don't leave till it's done. And I don't care if it's my competition or not. If you have 5 or 6 guys inside that house, 8 hours a day for 3 weeks, it looks pretty good when you leave.
Awesome. How many houses are you doing that for at any given time? Like, what's your average? How many projects do you have rolling right now?
I always have over 20, 30 at a time. If you count the heavy lifting part, now I see it all the way through until myself or the investor sells that property. So anybody who knows, like just because you've got a contract on that property to sell, you're only about halfway there. Not necessarily spending money, but you have the different phases where you have to attract a buyer, get a contract, and then you have to close. And in this environment, really, it's been like this as long as I've been doing it. The buyer comes in and says, we want this, 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 and this. And there's also a higher standard there now because they want it, not necessarily the way your investor wanted it. And you got a lot of last minute stuff. So if you count that, we could very well have 80 going or 90 and it grows because the houses are sitting longer than they used to. But as far as heavy lifting, we get a crappy house and we turn that into a marketable house, 20 to 30 at a time.
Okay.
But we're finishing every bit of a house a day. I mean, we're ordering granite 6 days a week at least. So a lot of people will say they have 40 or 50 projects going. We're finishing over 30 a month.
Wow, that's awesome. And where are you? It's quite a bit of volume. I know you mentioned you have partners, but you also take them down yourself sometimes. Where are you?
No partners. I don't have partners. I had to clear that up.
Sorry, not
partners. I was maybe speaking figuratively at the beginning, like partner friendly.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so people who hire you to do volume. Right?
Yeah, I'm anti-partner.
Okay.
I'm anti-partner. The biggest expense you can have is a partner. I don't.
Right. So where are you sourcing all this? Because that's a lot.
Are you talking about sourcing the contracting side, or because that's easy? You yell out the window and people will use you for contracting. Somebody will watch this video and say, but finding deals is the real competitive.
Finding deals is what I'm curious about, Aeron.
Okay, so finding deals, I have a lot of lines in the water, no question about that, right? I mean, there is, and I have an acquisitions guy who is great. So we pay for some marketing. We spend maybe $10,000 a month on mail.
Okay,
I mean, that's direct mail, right? Yep. And we do that. But for me, it's a little bit, I network like crazy. So to give you an example, let's use Brenton as an example. I've already dropped his name. I'm doing 100 rehabs for him a year. Mm-hmm. And because of my contracting company is fairly in demand, I might tell Brenton, hey, you got to give me one every now and then.
Gotcha.
So, and I do a lot of networking with my customers. And so it's almost like full circle so if they're maxed out, I say, hey, can you send me one before you send it to somebody else, for example? At least give me the last look on it. I'm not trying to take money out of your pocket, but like rather than sell it to that guy for a $20,000 wholesale fee, can you sell it to me? So there's a lot of that stuff as far as networking. To me is everything in relationships. So I network with my customer base. We spend some money on mail. And if you have any ideas, I know you do I always get the abbreviation wrong. Say it. What is it? The PPC. And I need to get into that. I know you do that, and I want to talk to you about that more after we have tried some of that with different suppliers over the years, and I've never really had a lot of success with it, but I'm ready to jump back into that.
Yeah, we could definitely talk about that. A lot of it has to do with population reach. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, happy to help anywhere we can with that. So walk me through this operation of yours. I know you're at the top, right? And you have your contracting firm, you have an acquisitions arm, and then you mentioned to me that you also have a brokerage run by your wife. So how does this all kind of fit inside of this whole operation that you're overseeing here? Like how do you decide which ones you're going to keep for yourself and add to your portfolio, the ones that you're going to flip? Walk us through that internal operation and how you keep everything organized.
Right. So if we're trying to find a house to buy and renovate, I mean, I estimate the renovation costs, and I estimate how much I'm willing to pay. And then of course, estimate the ARV, which is not a actual number. That is my opinion. An ARV, a lot of people think that ARV is the an actual number. It's not. It's an estimate by us that should try to predict an appraised value, right? And so after it's done, and the what makes you good at this is to be able to get close to that number. I think we were all geniuses for 4 or 5 years there, and then the past year we're all kind of dummies, and that's kind of how it's been. But luckily, it's been stabilizing, so we've been able to predict that ARV, and then the reality of it is that the number, that ARV number minus your expenses, that's what you make, right? So you have to make a determination of how much you're willing to, how much you want to make based on the risk associated with that, and that's how it goes. I mean, easy numbers. I have a spreadsheet with every expense you could imagine in there, and I pretty much type in what I'm paying for it, what's going to cost me to renovate it, and what I think it's going to sell for. Mm-hmm. And if that number's acceptable, then I move forward, and it's a really simple business, but you really have to, that simple math that we all learn in about 5th grade, because that's what this is, 5th grade math, has to be accurate. And a lot of people there's a lot of hidden expenses in there that, say newer people don't necessarily pay attention to, like your interest payments on your hard money, or your selling side expenses, or that awful PIN, we call it. You might have to have some expenses in order to get that to the table, and they become more predictable the more experience you have. And I try to, I do a couple different things. I'm not a huge percentage person, but I do shoot for about 50,000 when I do a flip. Now
Okay.
that doesn't always happen, but
Yeah.
if there's a $50,000 profit there, I'm on it.
Okay.
You know,
And the amount of volume you're doing, are you also the one kind of underwriting the deals and running the math, or do you have an internal team helping you out there?
no, I underwrite everything myself. That is the one thing that I do. I mean, look, I can do it very quickly. I've been doing it a long time. I've bought over, I don't know, over 1,000 houses. I think a lot more than that, but I'll say that number. I'm also somewhat obsessed with the business. So I also, not only do I look at what I'm buying, but I look at what you're buying. I look at, so I'm constantly asking my customers, hey, what'd you pay for this? What are you selling it for? And I'm on some form of MLS. I'm kind of weird. Like, I like Zillow for some reason. Everybody makes fun of me, but I like Zillow. I know it. I like it on my phone. I don't like it on the desktop for some reason, but I'm very quick with Zillow.
Okay.
And I like the map. I like the yellow and the red, and it's just easy for me. But of course, I have access to other platforms. That's just my thing. And so I look at it very quickly, and I know my area. So, I can look at a house in Parkville or Gwen Oak or one of these outlying liars and know that that's going to get 300 grand. Now, will it get 280 or 320? That's very possible, but I know it's around there. I know it's not 600,000, and I know it's not 100,000. So if I see 300, and then I see a wholesaler that might have that marketed for 160, I'm going to target it.
Yeah.
I just know it. I've already stuck those type of numbers in my spreadsheet so much that I'm kind of like, now is it a deal at 180 or 190? It may be, but I that depends on the renovation. You have to like dig a little deeper into it. But if I start seeing like 140, 150 and 300,000 is the sales price, I go further. So I kind of do a really quick scrub.
Hmm.
Auction sites, wholesalers. I try to get on all the lists. I don't know how many people calling me, hey, I got this great deal. It's worth, the ARV is 400. I'll sell it to you for 200. Well, let me look. Chances are the ARV is 320.
Yeah.
And then, I'm not afraid to offer you 150. I don't really care what the marketing says with the wholesaler. I kind of make my offer based on what I would be willing to pay for it, I guess.
Yeah, it's super important to get the acquisition price right, obviously. But it's really cool hearing you say that, because we worked with a lot of developers too that would almost just have the intimate knowledge of whatever area and know right off the bat if they're getting, kind of a little squeeze from whoever's bringing it from them about an ARV. And I mean, that probably allows you to act very fast, right? When you hear a certain neighborhood, certain price point, you already know because you've probably done hundreds of them yourself.
Yeah, and also on the renovation side, I mean, look, a cheap renovation nowadays would be like 50,000,
Okay.
and an expensive renovation would be like 90 or 100,000. That seems like a big spread, but it's not in this business. So okay, so let's just assume 70, and I kind of make a lot of decisions not with my numbers really you know perfect, but there's enough spread there. I'm not going to buy something marginal and not have them perfect. But there's plenty of deals where the spread is so good that just jump on it and maybe figure it out as you go. But don't be unrealistic, and don't let your brain raise values as you're sitting there. I mean, I've talked to, I don't know how many investors over the years, and especially newer people, and I'm like, what do you think the ARV is? And they say 300. And then the next day they wake up and they go, I think I can get 320 out of this. And then the next day they say, I think I can get 340. It's like, you ain't that powerful. You're not going to just raise this value of this house by sitting here. Like, figure out what it's worth. That's what it is. Make your decision. You're definitely not controlling my price. That's not
Mhm.
happening. So get the price from me, and it is what it is. Don't think you're going to be able to like finagle something. And take those numbers, stick them in your spreadsheet. And there is risk associated with all of this, which is a detailed, I mean, I could tell you story after story of risk, bad stuff that's happened. And it's always about what you pay for it. And the thing, if you buy it right, and I tell everybody this, you get halfway through the project, you don't feel like doing it anymore. If you bought it well enough, you can sell it and get out of it. You should never be in a position during this process of buying and selling, which could be a 3 to 10 month process, depending, to where you can't just get out without losing. And that all comes down to what you pay for it.
Yeah. Aaron, part of what I love hearing on the show is kind of like lessons learned or something that happened to you. Would you be willing to share one of your stories there?
I can
Let's
go
hear.
back a week if you
Yeah.
want. I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah.
it's with the volume I have, there's wins, there's losses, and I don't know. You hear a lot about wins, and I can tell you over the past 6 months, I got a plenty of losses.
Okay.
It's and thank God I had such a good 4 or 5 years, and all I've ever wanted is stabilization. There's nothing worse than buying a house in one market and then selling it in another, especially if that market's less. And I don't care what the news says, we're down about 15%. There's no question about that. And if you want to do some quick math on that, take a $300,000 house and knock off about 45 grand off that value, and that's where we're at. So, well, that if you bought that house thinking you were going to make 45,000, you're at zero. So let's just say we were being squeezed on both ends on the purchase and the sale. So say you went in thinking you're going to make 20, you're at minus 25,000. And so the question
Like
is, where does that money come from? You need to go be right about something just to get to zero, and it's been pretty miserable to say the least over the past. Now I'm coming out of it. It was fine now. It was horrible 5 or 6 months ago. I mean, I can tell you story. I mean, I bought a house in January of this year. What I think is an ARV of maybe 100,000. I think I paid 165. I literally found that my acquisitions guy found it on Facebook. Some one of those national wholesalers.
Wow.
Which you should always be wary about the national wholesalers because there's always something. Well, of course, I just jump right on and buy it. I didn't even look at it, buy the thing. And we immediately get stopped by the county. And I'm thinking, well, this is pretty cosmetic. Like, well, they said you have no access to this house, And by the way, it was full of squatters and
Perfect.
all kinds of trash. So they waited until I cleared everything up. I got rid of the squatters. I got rid of the. So now the place looks great from the road, right? So now they say they want me to stop, and so I find out that my house was in the middle of a development. So I'm driving across two lots. My driveway goes across another owner's lots, basically.
Okay.
And that other owner is like nowhere to be found. So basically the county says, look, you need to get an easement there before we're going to let you do anything else.
Gotcha.
And you have to track down an owner that doesn't exist. Now, we had to file a suit, which cost money. That suit did generate a response from these owners. I had to work out all kinds of financial details. And now I can drive on the driveway. That was, you would never, imagine pulling up to a house with a normal driveway, going through your yard to your house, pulling up to a garage, and you don't own that driveway. And so, and the people don't want you driving on it. And so here we are 10 months later. I got it all worked out and we're finally working. I'm paying interest the entire time on the hard money loan.
Yeah.
You would think I would know what I'm doing, right?
Just a little. It's funny how someone like you who does so many deals in the construction, like wholesale investors, still like every day something new comes up and you're like, oh man, how am I going to problem solve and how am I going to figure this out?
Oh, I have another one. This is just in the past few months. I interrupt, but and then I'll leave you alone with this one. I have to drill a new well because the well's no good. Well, next door, about 50 or 60 years ago, in this piece of grass that's next door that I don't own, used to be a fireworks manufacturer, some sort of MD, Maryland Department of Environment hazard. So I have to drill a special well because of some sort of contamination from 50, 60 years ago. I mean, before I was born, they used to manufacture fireworks next to this house. So that well was an additional 30 grand than a normal well. So in my ARV, I know what a well costs, or about what it costs. I didn't think I would have to spend another 30,000 for a special well to drill down maybe to the second aquifer or something I don't know anything about. So that kind of stuff, if you thought you were going to make 30, that phone call is zero.
Right. Yeah. And just like that, it's gone. That's why acquisition costs, I always tell people like that's everything. If you overpay just a little bit and then something like that happens, then you're really screwed.
And the wholesaler probably knows, or the seller knew, but there's nothing you can do about it but muscle through it. And,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. So one other thing that kind of caught my attention too was that I think you had said you had like over 300 of your own doors in your own portfolio. Walk us through what that looks like. I'm sure like there's a property management aspect of it. Is that something that you all do internally, or how are you managing that on top of everything else?
Yeah, it's the most miserable part of my world is those
Okay.
rental properties. But I have three virtual assistants that do a great job. That took a while to get to that point where they do a good job. We have, myself and a couple of other. I have about 7 human beings
Okay.
uh,
Just for your rental
just for
portfolio?
the rental.
Okay.
We manage it in house. Outsourcing management. If anybody knows of a good one, let me know. I haven't had the best experience with that. I've just done better just doing it in house.
Okay.
I do have a maintenance staff of 3 guys, and they do minor repairs. And if it's something over their head, they call me, and I send the contracting
Gotcha.
guy, the heavy lifting guys there. So it's kind of how it's set up. So they're putting doors back on and unclogging things and fixing leaks all day, every day. And we're always a little backed up with that stuff. And then if they, you know, something that's more than a day's worth of work or 2 days worth of work, I'll send a crew to do that. I don't believe that the rental properties make a ton of money. I couldn't imagine doing that for a living. They are the source of wealth, though, and there's a ton of equity there just from longevity doing it. I would say I've had a couple different lives, and I've sold. I don't know how many rental properties I've owned over the years, well over 1,000, but I've sold them and traded them. But I would say the oldest one now is probably 2019, and we bought a ton in 19, 20, and 21, and we really started taking advantage of the DSCR product that's out there.
Yeah.
And that's been tough here recently in Maryland for obvious reasons. Everybody's heard about the fraud in Maryland, and so they've kind of tightened the reins on that stuff. But that product we just went crazy with that, and so we have a mix of stuff in that 3% and 4% interest rate that we got back in the, don't quote me on this, but maybe the 2020, 2021 stuff,
Yeah,
where we
somewhere
have
around
really
there.
good interest rates. And then the most recent stuff has been like around 7%,
Okay.
and we have a mix of what I call small multifamily, a lot of like 3, 4, 5 unit buildings, fair amount of single family. And then just recently, we have a 21 unit, a 26 unit. So, and we have a little bit of commercial stuff
Okay.
too, but
And
I'm
how do
always looking
you,
for spread.
gotcha. How are you deciding which ones you keep for yourself internally or which ones you just, go in, renovate, and then put back on the market?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of people ask me that. And I don't know if I've completely perfected this answer just yet. If I can make $50,000 selling a house quickly, maybe
Hmm.
in a 3 or 4 month turnaround, something like that, I'm doing it. I don't, I don't know if the appraiser's going to love me for this, but if the appraisal comes in more than what you can actually sell it for, it's a rental.
Hmm.
And I know that it shouldn't be like that, but appraisals don't always take into effect actual liquidation value. They think they do, but they don't. That's where you got to be almost smarter than them. For example, say you have a 4 bedroom, 1 bath, chopped up house that's kind of, when you walk in, it's kind of goofy looking. You can buy that house cheaper because it's not the most retail friendly to sell, but it
Right.
rents no problem,
Yeah.
because renters don't care about layout as much. They care about space, and appraisers don't care about that as much. They might appraise that for, let's just say they appraised that property at 250, and you're like, man, I couldn't sell this for 250 because it's an ugly house, but it's got the square footage, and it'll generate, let's say, $2,500 a month in rent. That would be a great rental. Like I love kind of weird houses for rentals. I was thinking of one I just picked up in the past year. It had like 8 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. And it was like the ugliest looking house, and it also had a trailer on the property that also gets $1,000. Well, $1,000, let's just say, gets you $100,000 in buying power, right?
Hmm.
You're not going to sell that. That trailer's not worth $100,000 in addition to whatever the house. It's almost worthless
Right.
from a retail side. So, I bought that house. I bought the whole property for $100,000, and I may have spent like 60 or 70 getting that cleaned up.
Hmm.
And then I think I rent that big house for like $3,000, and the trailer for like $1,000. So
Oh,
I
wow.
bring in like $4,000 on a total investment of say 170. But could I sell that? And it appraised at like 250 or more. Let's just say
Hmm.
I can't remember, but could I have sold it for that? I don't think so. Too
Right.
ugly.
Yeah.
But the appraiser gave me a 250. Now the bank's probably rolling over in their grave thinking, well, shoot, if we had to take this back, what do you mean? The appraisal came in at 250. Well, I mean, we're in the game. And there was no influence there. They hired the appraisal. The appraiser goes out, and I just kind of, you have to kind of know what they're looking for. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I kind of like to sell sellable houses, and I like to keep rentable houses, and sometimes there's a difference.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Some of them are a little unsellable, but that's how you approach it. How many doors are you adding every month or every year to your?
I've slowed down a little bit over the past. I go in waves with that stuff, but the 26 unit that I just referenced, I bought a few weeks ago. So that was kind of a big hit, like kind of a nice, but
What's the play with that?
I don't know. I bought it. What's that?
What's the play with the 26 unit? Do you have to go in and renovate it and then fix it
It
up?
was very, very cosmetic. There were some vacants that needed turned over, but I
Gotcha.
think I spent like maybe it's done. Maybe 20 grand just cleaning up. It was in pretty good shape. It was already lead free and compliance, mostly rented. And there was some vacant stuff, and that was just negotiating. I mean, I offered low, and it took maybe 2 or 3 months, and they would come back, and then finally they just said yes.
Yeah.
And so I still try to predict the appraised value. So I paid 1.55 for that, and I
Hmm.
think it's going to appraise for 100,000 a unit, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
And
no.
then there are plenty of lenders who will give you on multifamily 65%. It's not 80. All these lenders that get you in the door, they tell you 80%, but on multifamily, it's typically 65, 70%.
Okay.
And so you just have to kind of work it back from there and see if it's something you can handle, if you want to have any money in it, or if not. I have money in some of these and some of them I don't.
Okay. And what's your, if you're not putting your own money in, you just hard money lending, obviously the flips that way, and then getting in, getting out.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in no money out of your pocket as little as possible if you want to scale. I mean, I don't care how much money you have. If you're actually doing this, you don't have that much money. Otherwise, you would be sitting somewhere doing nothing. I mean, all these guys that are like have all this money. It's like, well, why are you here? Go do something less risky, I guess. Or lend it or something. But if yeah, I believe like even if you're putting 30 or $40,000 in your own deal, you start to limit yourself on how many you can do, and your cash on cash return becomes a lot lower. Ideally, an ideal rental property for me is something I can buy at a discount. I can renovate at a discount and get an appraisal where I'm significantly less in than say 70%.
Hmm.
So if I get 75% loan and I can get some cash out, great. And if I don't get cash out, that's fine also. I just want my money back. So if I'd use hard money, and I usually put some money in, not much, maybe between 5, 10, 15, 20,000 a deal on the front end. And I
Hmm.
want that 20 back though.
Right.
So I can put that somewhere else, you know,
Yeah. On to the next one.
on to the next one. And you want to have no money in, otherwise you'll run out.
Yes. Very fast.
Or you're fire selling or something to get your money back to take advantage of the next. You always want to be ready for the next deal. And if you dump your money in these deals, the last thing you want is to not be able to buy something because you don't have any money.
Right.
Right.
Aaron, what's your long-term strategy for the doors that you own?
I,
Is
I
there one?
no, I'm still a one at a time. I mean, I buy a couple a week, either flips or rentals, and I just kind of, if the opportunity is presented to me, I buy it. I had last November, I think I bought 25 buildings. But I normally would buy, maybe less than 10 a month. And then out of nowhere, so if the deals are good, I'm buying them. But as far as the long term, I'm sure you've heard this before. I remember there was a time in my life where I said I wanted 10 properties so I could retire and not work. Next thing you know, I had 10. And I said, well, I want to get 50 so I can have my own maintenance guy. And that way I don't have to go out and hire maintenance, because you start to need an in-house maintenance guy around 50 properties, right? And so next thing you know, I had 50, and then it's like, well, wouldn't it be cool to brag about having 100? And then I had 100. I don't know. I told somebody, man, at 300 I'm going to stop, and now I'm at 370, and so I don't know. I mean, I still am having a lot of fun. I'm still pretty obsessed with it. So I don't see. With that said, I guess it'd be cool to. I don't know, maybe refinance them all down the road for a big, and then
That'd be pretty sweet.
ride
And
off
500's
somewhere.
on that horizon, and
What's
then
that?
500's on the horizon, and then 1,000's on
Yeah,
the.
maybe so. I mean, they are miserable. Don't get me wrong, but they do kind of, if you're scorekeeping in the game of life, that's the score. I mean, it's I that is where the wealth is. And I will say, like, if I were just contracting or flipping houses, I don't care if you're making a couple $1,000,000 a year or whatever, the money goes. But somehow that those rental properties, they help out with your taxes. They kind of grow equitably without you paying attention to it. Like, I think there's not enough emphasis on the pay down because it's so slow, because you're literally paying nothing down when you buy them, and then you're making your little 300, 400, 500 bucks of cash flow, and then that gets eaten up with one big maintenance call, and so it's all about survival with that stuff. But if I look back at the stuff that let's say I bought in 2019 or 2020, at the time I was paying kind of market value for it. And I look back and I'm like, man, those things, I've got 300,000 in equity in that building, or and if I wanted to refinance and pull cash out, I could. They bring a level of stability to my life. That's where, and you would never. I don't know if you could do that with any other vehicle. Hustling contracting or hustling flips. I mean, yeah, you make some cash, and then what? The government takes it, and then you have to go
long-term
hustle.
compounding. It's kind of like I'm big into set it and forget it investing in the stock market. Been doing it since I was 18, so for close to 20 plus years. And it's crazy. You just don't think about it, then you look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, it went from this to this. It's the same thing in real estate. I'm a big. I mean, I don't have to tell anyone on the importance of building wealth through real estate, but I'm also a big fan of it because of that.
It's not passive. I mean, there's a lot of work involved and a lot of systems in place and a lot of relationships that have to be developed and that sort of thing. So it's a lot of work, and for not a lot of return. But I always recommend buy rentals, buy rentals, buy rentals. Don't do it for a living though. Like, people will say, I'm going to get into the rental business. Like, I wouldn't, could I live off the rentals? Maybe I would have, let's say I got rid of some staff and I did their jobs. So I could save there, I guess. But I don't really look at it like that. I mean, that money pretty much gets reinvested. I wouldn't want to live off of it. Now the flips, I live off of. I mean, that's good money. But it's also like any other fast cash. It goes. I tell people, just it's almost like a forced savings account. Those rentals. You buy one, you have to deal with it. And your mind will elevate to a spot where you're kind of forced to survive. And I kind of like doing that to myself. I don't know why. Maybe there's a time where I'm going to get tired of that. But I do. I keep buying them, and I'm glad. I'm always happy I did. Maybe the first 6 months is really miserable, but like anything I've owned for, let's say, 2 years, especially if you stabilize a tenant and they're not going anywhere, it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole nother variable and a whole another conversation about like 50-50. Are you going to have a nice, tenant that doesn't give you problems, or the exact opposite? I'm sure that comes into play too. With you and having 300 plus, I'm sure you've ran into your fair share of bad tenants or tenants that don't play nicely.
I've heard I have 3 evictions tomorrow. Those aren't good tenants, So it's and then I have doors, houses, whatever, that I forget. If you can forget about them somehow, that's what you want. I remember kind of being lost, and you'd see a street, you're like, oh, I have a house in that street, I haven't been there in years. And you drive by and look at it, and the Christmas wreath is still in the front door, and maybe a kid's throwing a ball outside or something. You're like, okay, they're good. It's haven't heard from them, and they're basically paying down your debt. And I mean, ultimately, I don't know if this would ever happen in my lifetime, but that DSCR product offers, has that 30-year, the payment stays the same. And I don't even care what the interest rate is. All you want in this business is stability, and that is what you get with that. You have this same payment, and then the rent fluctuates. I mean, you could raise them if you want to. I don't do a lot of raising rent. I don't like to disrupt good tenants. I have raised some rent, but I like tenants that stay. And yes, I got my little bit of cash flow, but they are paying down. They're funding my, let's call it, retirement.
Yeah.
They might even be funding my kids' retirement. I don't know. It's the pay down is very interesting, and it exponentially happens.
Hmm.
And you might get lucky, and I think this would be lucky that the asset itself goes up.
Yeah, right. Aaron, how are you structuring all these different entities or properties? Do you have like a map where everything's in a trust and you have their own LLC? Like, how are you handling the legal side of acquiring these properties for yourself?
Yeah, well, I try to keep that somewhat secretive so it's from creditors. But
Okay.
either way,
It'll
I
be
don't
fair
want
if
them
you
to
don't
work
need to.
too hard.
Yeah.
But yes, this asset protection is a big deal. Obviously, they start with LLCs
Yeah. Okay.
and then they get moved around a little bit.
We can leave it at that.
Yeah, and and there, of course, a lot of you have to weigh um, how much protection. I mean, you can protect and protect and protect and protect to where you're out of business because of the expense. But I think LLCs, you jump online, get an LLC, and put a handful of properties in that LLC. Is kind of pretty much how I do it. And then there's definitely no personal attachment to them
Gotcha.
other than taxes. And then but it's they're all at least at a minimum under some form of LLC.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool, man. Well, Aaron, this has been awesome. I know you have a lot of different like hats that you're rolling here, contractor, rental portfolio manager, you have your brokerage. But if you could do one, I'm just curious, which one is your passion here?
I like finding the deals.
You
And
do?
I think a lot of people like that part of it too. I don't even care about selling them. I like finding them. So it's that for some reason the dopamine rush is in the making the deal where you're buying it. It's not even you would think it's when you get the wire at the end, but it's not. I don't know why that is. It's like, somebody calls me today and says, we negotiate, a 400,000 ARV for a $120,000 purchase, and it's going to cost me $70,000 to renovate. We sign it up, and it's with the title company. That's when I'm the happiest.
Cool.
Even though all I have done has bought myself work, risk, and maybe have to come up with 10, 20, $30,000 to put into this deal or whatever. I don't know why that's the most fun for me. I don't
It
know.
is fun. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that
I mean,
actually.
then let's say you make 100,000 on a flip, which I've done plenty of times. They're far few between nowadays, but that happens, and hopefully it'll start happening again. And you're thinking, it's almost like, oh, okay, you forgot about it. It's you forget to even call the title company for your wire. It's the weirdest thing, and I think it's something sick about that. As far as I also like it when the property goes on the market for sale. That day is a good one too. I feel accomplished. So there's all these different phases and steps that are involved with the stuff, and I like that one. And then it's whenever you put something on the market, you're kind of out of control. You don't really, but you kind of control everything until it's up there, the house is done, and then I would say the most miserable part is from that point to the sale. That's
Correct.
That's the worst. So as far as the contracting side of things, I like that part too. I have in-house guys, so I'm able to control. I think the biggest problem investors have, or what they really hate, is the lack of control over that.
Hmm.
You have to really be trusting, and you are out of control. Those guys that are in there with those hammers and stuff, they have your life and your future in their hands, basically. And I have positioned myself to where I have some control over that, but not completely. But I like that part. I like the blue collar side of it. I'm not a huge like spreadsheet analyzer. If I can't analyze something quick, I really don't like it. But I like going to the job. So if I spend most of my day on the road, going to my projects, whether they're my own or somebody else's, and I go in there and make fun of the guys working and make sure they're happy. And I like that part of it. I like making the deals. Administrative, awful for me. Awful. Okay, so but I like the relationship part of it. I like having fun with whoever, and talking about the stuff and I didn't I grew up fairly humble beginning, so like I'm pretty proud of not only what I've been able to accomplish, but also in my little ecosystem. There's some success there with my relationships, and I'm really proud of them too. And there's a lot when you purchase a house. There's so much stuff that comes from people making money and an industry that comes from that. Everything from title, realtors, tradespeople, construction.
Yeah.
Everybody's taking a piece of that pie. And it's pretty cool to see all that. There's the granite guy. I'm the granite guy's biggest. He lives off my account, or the cabinet supplier and Home Depot and the people that work at Home Depot. So I like
Right.
all that part of it.
That's
Off
awesome.
one house.
That's my favorite part too, just talking, like meeting you, talking about you, learning about your story. I love the relationship side of real estate because you never know
Yeah.
who you're going to meet on a given day. Like how we met, I think I put out like a Facebook ad or something asking for guests and you responded, and now we're talking and I'm learning a whole nother business that's like right in my backyard kind of. You're not too far north from where I am in Alexandria. So that my favorite part too is like the networking and the relationship as well.
I like that, and I also like the financial aspect of it, and the money and wealth creation. And you don't really have to have a lot to do it. You do have to have some guts, and you have to have some math skills, and you have to have some relationship skills. The relationship skills may be the most important, or either the guts or the relationship skills are important. Like if you're scared of outcomes, that might not be the
Right.
best thing for you. But and you don't. I think the myth is that you have to have all this money, and I mean, I can tell you, I started with zero, maybe less than zero. So there are, maybe the more capital you have, the easier it can be sometimes. But there's definitely, if you're watching something like this and thinking, hey, how do I get into this with $0? There is a very 3 to 5 minute solution for that, depending on the scenario. I don't think, I see these guys say online, say, well, go spend $50,000 with me for training, and which I've never done anything like never paid for any mentorship or anything like that. And why don't you jump into a 100-unit building and down in Miami or whatever? And I'm like, you crazy? I mean, you're not
That's
doing
a
that.
little crazy.
You're not doing that, But I can tell you right now, you can go buy yourself $100,000 shack in the country that might have an ARV of 250, and you can muscle your way through a 40, 50, $60,000 rehab. And I can tell you, if you can't find the money for somebody to loan that to you, I'll find it for you.
Yeah.
Call me. Okay. So, and that's you find yourself a $300,000 house that's, when you're done, it's worth that much. And you can be all into that for 150,000. There's plenty of those deals out there if you're willing to work and look for them. And you're worried about finding money, call me, and I'll show you where the money's at. I'll either get somebody to loan it to you, or I'll loan it to you. And so there's plenty of, and yes, I know at the beginning I said I was anti-partner. I started out with some partners, and that's because I didn't have any money, and I don't do it now, but yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and you're not selling widgets for $5. You're selling big structures for hundreds of thousands of dollars that you don't need any money to acquire.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Aaron, I appreciate you sharing with me and everyone listening today. Appreciate your time. A lot of really awesome stuff. Congratulations on your success, by the way. Some other conversations we can have offline about like the PPC. I'm also interested in. Are you, out of curiosity, are you taking on new construction clients? Like if someone brought you a house, or are you kind of like, are you always taking on new clients like that, or where?
Always, yeah. So I'm always putting the puzzle together to keep all these guys working. I'm big into short-term goals, and like my goal every day is to have these couple of hundred guys working. And sometimes that is a challenge. Not so much. The challenge is with that many guys is that timing sometimes. So I can always plug you in, always plug you in. And there's also, I have a pretty good network of, we'll call them contractor trades, labor.
Mhm.
I mean, I've been doing it long enough to where I have some of these guys, their sons and daughters are working for me now. So construction people make lots of kids. So I always have more people wanting work. And part of not hiring them is I don't feel like looking for more work. I mean, if it came to me, I'll put you to work, So yes, I am always looking for new people. I underwrite you as much as you're underwriting your deals. I want to make sure that you're making smart decisions and stuff. There's nothing worse than dealing with somebody that's about to lose on a property. Because guess whose fault it is? It's gonna be my fault. I don't want that. Even though it's your fault. And so yes, I'm always looking for that.
Where geographically? Like, do you come down to Northern Virginia, like in my neck of the woods? No, so you're only up in, no.
No, but I'll go down close to Northern Virginia.
Okay.
What we have no problem going to that Home Depot in Alexandria, but we want to stay on this side. Yeah, I'm licensed in Maryland, not Virginia. That's not that, I got to draw a line somewhere. And and I have done that work in Alexandria and Arlington or wherever. And the next thing you know, the same people are saying, "Hey, do you go to Fredericksburg?" And then the same people, "Hey, do you go to Richmond?" And so we just kind of, as at this point in my career, we do go to PG and Montgomery. So we do 495 work, all of Maryland. I'd rather not go past like Hagerstown. I don't want to go through West Virginia, another state, to get to a part of Maryland. And then the Eastern Shore, we'll go down to Ocean City for fun sometimes and do. Every investor has a condo down there, it seems like. So we'll go down there and do turnovers and stuff. We'll pretty much go anywhere. We're Maryland people.
Yeah, makes sense. You got to draw the line. So, Aeron, if someone is in your part of, Maryland and wants to reach out or, learn of how you can potentially work together, how would one get in touch with you?
I'll put my phone number on here, and you always text. Unless they limit the amount of text your phone can hold, which I don't think. So just text me. I mean, you can call, I guess, but text is the best because that way I can just see it and call you back.
All right.
And I will call you back. I mean, I do all this sales and stuff. It's like I said, the relationship part's my favorite thing. And I'll talk real estate with anybody. I also don't mind doing some consulting. I don't have like a coaching program or charge or anything, but it keeps me fresh. With newer people, if they have questions, and a lot of times, even if you don't use me as a contractor and you're like at a point where you need to get over a hump, and a lot of times jobs will stop because of something silly that they just haven't experienced, or utility management or something like, the power company just won't hook this power up. It might just be a move that you're not making, that somebody's not helping you with, or you didn't hear in your training or whatever it is. And chances are I might know that answer and might be able to help you over that hump. So I don't mind doing that for free, or,
cool.
If you want, it reminds me like, oh yeah, make sure to call the power company the day you buy the house, because that could be a complete disaster. Even though it's on 2 days later, that's not free power.
Yeah.
And that can turn into a real disaster. Or sometimes somebody might just need hey, do you know of a dumpster company? I don't know. Just if you want to shoot the shit with me when it comes to real estate, I'm always about it. But yeah, if you need a rehab done in Maryland, I'd love the opportunity to
awesome. We will include your contact information in the description of the episode here. We'll follow up with post-production kind of stuff that we'll need some information for you with all that. Yeah. All right, man. Well, it was awesome. If you could stick around for a second after this, I'm gonna pause the recording here. But it's a pleasure having you and talking through this. And hopefully, anyone listening that's trying to get into the construction flip game here, learn something, and can take away from your awesome stories that you shared with us.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
All right.